Good Thursday morning, and welcome to the fifth installment of Chapter 13 of Low Magic. It's all in your head. You just have no idea how big your head is. And Chapter 13 is entitled The Exorcism of Our Lady of Sorrows. And yesterday we ended talking about the vice principal's office. And I said, I have to confess, I took perverse pleasure in remembering how in my rambunctious school days I confronted several other obnoxious demons in a high school vice principal's office. And I would wager several of you listening to this can identify. Was I a bad boy in high school, dear?
What?
Was
You a bad boy?
was I a bad boy in high school?
I don't know. I only see the good in people. But I knew those vice principals.
Somebody on Facebook remembered me misbehaving during the rehearsals of The Music Man in high school. And the director turned to her and said, Lon just can't help himself. But anyway, be that as it may, we're in the vice principal's office. And I hope you've been watching the earlier installments because for me to reset up everything right now to bring us to this place would be too much of a burden. Those of my readers who are experienced magicians can imagine my state of mind after spending so many hours of banishing, etc. And I described the lengthy procedure that I did in every room of the school that night. I was physically exhausted, yet at the same time psychically energized. Very few times in my magical career had I reached this exalted level of spiritual intoxication. By the time I reached the vice principal's office, the borderline between the material and the magical worlds had essentially vanished. To say I was hallucinating would be an understatement. For hours now, my pentagrams and hexagrams hung visibly in the air around me, and each time I spat out the words Apopantos kakodaimenos, every spirit entity, good or evil, went scurrying off to anywhere in the building that had not been cleared and sealed off by the wild-eyed exorcist. The only place left for all of that concentrated smutch was to take refuge here. And the air in the room hung thick with the stinking demonic chum of the entire building. I slapped Slug Slug's little post-it note sigil and triangle on the desk pad of the vice principal's desk and stepped back a few feet. I checked to make sure I was still wearing my yarmulke, magical juror's badge, and the medallion bearing the pentagram and the demon's sigil. Lastly, I patted the outside of my shirt to assure myself that I was still safely wrapped in my magic circle. Everything being in order, I aimed my wand at the triangle and commanded, as before, Slugshug, come! A little more intense than that. Slug Slug appeared immediately, quietly, peacefully, as if only a moment had passed since our last encounter. A large, handsome Norwegian magpie perched pleasantly upon his yellow post-it note. I marveled on how normal it all seemed. I was almost happy to see him, grateful for his exotic and dangerous companionship amid this cowed and colorless hell of a Catholic school. His presence made the evening come suddenly alive and interesting. Like a fool, I initiated a conversation. Why do you torment these people? Is it evil for a crow to feast upon the eyes of a dangling knight? Was his answer. Now, right now, as I'm writing these words, they appear on the page to be melodramatic and corny, like something pulled from a demonic fortune cookie. At the time, however, they sounded anything but corny. In fact, Slug Slug's response took my breath away. In my fevered brain, the illusion was unmistakable. The demon was describing the doom of the luckless knights of the Round Table who failed in their quest for the Holy Grail. They were hung from trees like obscene fruit, and their eyes were plucked out and eaten by crows. I didn't answer. At least I didn't make a conscious effort to answer. I stood, accused by my own tidy spiritual worldview, paralyzed by the paradoxes of my smug philosophy. Indeed, who was I to presume and judge the righteousness or wrongness of the tragedies of Our Lady of Sorrows? Were not little goods and little evils both part of the great G goodness of the Supreme Consciousness? Had I plumbed the depths of the souls of these people? Had I weighed their infinitely complex karmas, their inherited destinies, and found some profound miscarriage of cosmic justice that only Lon Milo DuQuette could put right? Did I think I was some knight in shining armor galloping down the freeway to save the fair nuns and children? Was my clarity of vision so superior that I could, with ego-driven impunity, tamper with the momentum of the life and death of hundreds of people? People I'd never met. Indeed, is it evil for the crow to feast upon the eyes of a dangling knight? Why was I here? What really was my motive for doing this? Why was I standing here with my almond wand and my holy water and my magic toys and my purple yarmulke and my pretty bishop's stole? Did I look cool? Did I think all of this was going to look impressive in my magical diary? Maybe I'd even write a book about this someday. These thoughts triggered in my exhausted brain a chain reaction of even more crippling doubts and self-recrimination. All as the great bird grew more noble and stately as it stared silently at me from within the triangle of my magical mind's eye. But then I realized that he wasn't being silent, and that the accusatory voice I was hearing was that of the demon and not my own inner soliloquy. It was the damned magpie that tormented me with those thoughts, those ideas, those images. I had to hand it to Slug Slug. It was classic demonic behavior, and I'd fallen hard for it. My concentration had been severely broken, and as soon as I realized what was going on, Slug Slug started to flap his wings and lift himself into the air. I brandished my wand toward the triangle as if I were snapping a whip. "Back down, you son of a bitch." Every ounce of will flowed through my extended arm and out the barrel of my wand. It took everything I had to bring the great bird down upon the triangle. The moment its talons touched down, I heard a noise outside in the hallway. Out of the corner of my right eye, I saw the door to the staff area suddenly swing open. "Oh, sorry." It was Larry, the IT man. It was all he could say after barging into a smoky, candlelit room to find a red-faced wizard in a yarmulke and a bishop's stole aiming a stick at a tiny yellow post-it note. I did not move. Neither did I take my eyes off the triangle. With the same strange voice that called forth Slug Slug, I snarled at poor Larry with gritted teeth. "You're going to have to leave, Larry." Larry left. That did it. No more talking to Slug Slug. I didn't care anymore why I was doing this. I didn't care whether or not I was here because of my ego or my insecurities or my karma or my duty or my goddamn spiritual quest. Screw my motives. Screw good and evil. I was here doing what I was doing because the universe had conspired to put me in this place. That was enough. The momentum of my life put me here, and I wasn't going to leave until the job was finished. There would be no more attempts to redeem this spirit. I would not fart around trying to cajole, torment, banish, exile, or otherwise attempt to reprogram this monster into an angel of light. I was insanely angry, filled with a rage that exploded from my heart and arm and through the death ray gun of my wand. I could not abide its existence for 1 second longer. I took fiendish delight in spitting out the most hideous curse in my arsenal of Solomonic curses. Christios cornfa peripsal ama edos. Let the company of heaven curse thee. Christios rol grey tofglo oive ama edos. Let the sun, moon, and all the stars curse thee. Christios luciftia ultofglo pir peripsal ama eos pujo iel perj dies apeda. Od puji mirs adfat. Let the light and all the holy ones of heaven curse thee, unto burning flame that liveth forever, and unto the torment unspeakable. Slug Slug dissolved without a squawk. I felt as though my body was set in stone, my arm and wand still leveled at an empty desk. Oddly enough, I did not feel triumphant or even relieved. My overall feeling was that of embarrassment over the fact that I had allowed the spirit to toy with me and that I had not simply annihilated it and immediately upon conjuration. I composed myself for a moment or two, then performed the 7-part banishing procedure and sealed the vice principal's office. I took the posted note triangle with the departed spirit's seal into Sister Martha's bathroom, burned it, and flushed the ashes down the toilet. I packed up my gear into the briefcase and joined my brother Mark, who was waiting for me in the faculty lounge. Part 6, Post-Mortem. It's got a little epigram from Joseph Conrad. The belief in a supernatural source of evil is not necessary. Men alone are quite capable of every wickedness. Mark and I treated ourselves to a couple bottles of water as we debriefed in this faculty lounge. Neither of us shared many details of our labors. I did mention that Larry had burst in on me at the climax of my conjuration. We giggled uncomfortably for a moment, then fell silent as we both realized that Larry's office was the only place in the building neither of us had worked on. At that moment, the door opened and Larry poked his head in. "Sorry if we bothered you, Larry," I said with more than a hint of sarcasm. "I just wanted to make sure you guys were all right." "What was that you were doing?" Larry was visibly agitated. Mark shot back an answer. "Just helping Sister Martha." You'll have to ask her for details. "Well, if it has anything to do with the computers, I'm doing backup tonight, and it'll still take a while." "Nothing to do with your computers," I told him, "and we're done for the night." Larry said nothing in response. He just lingered in the doorway for a moment, as if unsure what to do or say next. Mark and I were indeed done for the night. We were both very tired. I wanted nothing more than to get home, take a shower, and sleep all day, which is pretty much what I did. I woke up early in the afternoon and in the cold light of day replayed the events of the night before my mind's eye. I was generally pleased with the exorcism and harbored little doubt that I had magically done everything I was capable of doing. However, I was convinced that Sister Martha would need to address a couple of very serious issues if the school was ever to become psychically healthy. The most obvious and the easiest to correct being the layout of the administrative staff area. I would be completely remiss in my exorcist's duty if I neglected to advise Sister Martha in the strongest terms to immediately hire a commercial feng shui consultant to rearrange that area. My second concern would be more difficult to address head on, because it dealt exclusively with my own very personal and subjective impressions. I had to be very careful how I would go about advising Sister Martha on the issue. I'm referring, of course, to the issue of Larry. Please don't misunderstand me. Not in my wildest magical fantasies did I suspect Larry was consciously some kind of satanic minion, a Renfield to Slug's Dracula. I had no reason to believe that he was anything more or less than a harmless IT nerd doing his very best every night to make a living. But his insecurity, paranoid behavior, and willingness to defy Sister Martha's instructions led me to question, at the very least, his personal integrity and emotional stability. I'm not a mental health expert, and my impressions are totally subjective. But Larry's conduct and demeanor left me with a distinct impression that he was a very disturbed man, and very disturbed men make very effective conduits, capacitors, condensers, storage batteries, and amplifiers of magical and psychic energy. You may beg the question, did the evil school building make Larry crazy, or did Larry make the school building evil? It does not matter. Larry was likely every bit the victim of Sister Catherine, every bit the victim as Sister Catherine, or the maintenance man who cut off his finger. As a magician, however, I cannot ignore the obvious. When I conjured the demon Slug by name, Larry the IT man walked into the room. Larry was in all likelihood an unwitting cog in the great nightmarish machine that was Slug. I strongly believe that for the good of the school and for Larry's own good, he should be removed from that environment. I called Mark and we discussed our conclusions. Mark then called Sister Martha and told her that the staff area needed a feng shui professional to rearrange things. And being inclined to embrace New Age concepts, she enthusiastically agreed and said she would do that immediately. Mark then mentioned that we both had our serious concerns about Larry. That he twice interrupted us and made us feel uncomfortable. She then confided that she too was uncomfortable with Larry working there at night, and that there were other issues she didn't want to share regarding his character and, quote, habits. She said she was probably going to soon let him go. I wish I had a more colorful and dramatic way to end this story, but I don't. I think that's probably a good thing. Several months later, Mark asked his Reiki instructor how his sister was and how things were going at Our Lady of Sorrows. He told Mark as far as he knew, things were going just fine. In this case, I'm hoping no news is good news. And that's the end of chapter 13, The Exorcism of Our Lady of Sorrows, from the book Low Magic. It's all in your head. You just have no idea how big your head is. Published by the good folks at Llewellyn. So tomorrow I'll just have to think of something less scary, or maybe more scary. Anyway, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.